Hey everyone, Kyle here. So, I have a very exciting video for you tonight. You know how much I love Magmar. Magmar was the original main, and so we got to Diamond with first. I believe it was Magmar on the channel, on the finally Diamond video. I could be wrong, but I have love. I have love for those big green angry lizard men, and though people constantly seem to think that they are the lowest tier, and that could be true, I personally love playing them. And lately, I have been spending a lot of time playing with decks. And what? This is a cool button. And so I have been working on what I call Ferrari Magmar. Now, the reason why it's called Ferrari Magmar is because the deck has 19 legendaries in it. But it's because of the playstyle. Now, let me get down to it. You guys know me. As much as I am willing to pick up a deck and play it, net deck or what have you. For the most part, I really like to build my own, and though there could be other similar decks, I usually don't look at deck lists, at least for Duelyst. I will talk to close friends who also play and stuff like that and see what they're doing. But Ferrari Magmar is a list that I came up with. It's kind of a dream list for me. I had always seen Flash Incarnation and Kujata and thought, we could totally make something sick with this. And believe it or not, the card that I think finally enables this is Rar. Now, there's a lot of big things we want to get out early, but Rar really makes the fact that we have these things that let us play minions earlier that also do damage to be extremely good in Magmar. Let me go through the deck real fast. Just kind of explain it, and then we will go into a replay where I played against Shades of Time. It is a game that is on my channel in the best of 3 against Shades of Time, but I'm going to explain why I did what I did, because in the video I was kind of messing around talking to Risky, and we were typing to people and stuff, so I wasn't really talking out loud. Plus I was focusing. It was a best of 3. I wanted to win, so this will be a way to explain why I pilot the deck the way I did, and then I have a little bonus, just fun thing to show you that this deck can do, the potential of it. So of course, we have Voth as our general. Now, to be honest, Starhorn might not be super bad in this deck, because sometimes, especially when early game, we're forced to use... early game we're forced to use a lot of removal. Like if our opening hand is just a bunch of 2-drops and we Flash Incarnate some things, our hand can get low pretty fast. But the reason why I end up choosing Voth is because your Bloodborne spell not only doesn't give your opponent a card, which in a deck like this, you need your opponent not to be able to answer you. And it's not even like, a risk. It's not a deck where you just slam something big and you hope they can't answer it. There is a strategy that I'll go over in a second. But it's a deck where you want to make sure your opponent has as little answers as possible, which most decks are, but this one especially. Plus, Voth's Bloodborne spell allows you the ability to clear minions yourself and use your health, kind of like a Warlock in Hearthstone would be a good example, since that is a very popular card game. You use your health to get advantage over your opponent, and the fact that Earthsphere is in here makes that a little less painful. Granted, usually only need one of them, but that's why there's only 2. So our first 2 cards are Flash Incarnation, which is the next minion you summon this turn, costs 2 less and takes 2 damage, and Kujata, which is a 2/2 that all your minions cost 1 less to summon and take 1 damage when they are summoned from your action bar. Now, these cards enable us to run such a top-heavy deck. Granted, it says we have 13 4-drops. So, not only is our deck is really more mid-range when you look at it, but our top end is very strong right here. But these cards enable us to make really powerful early plays, and we have a lot of potential on our first turn. If you have a Flash Incarnation in your hand, you can flash a Sworn Sister, for example, and immediately keep your full hand, because you're going to spend 2 cards, draw 2 cards, and then draw a card at the end of your turn. A Sworn Sister is also great because of the fact that she gives us access to cards that aren't already in the deck, and that can be useful. More healing, more control, more win conditions, just more stuff. is always good. Now, Kujata also enables this. Granted, you have to play him for 2 mana first, but that's okay because we can get repeated value out of him if he lives. Also, because our opponents know how threatening he can be, if we say we're going second, we can throw down like a young Silthar and then throw Kujata down behind us, and our opponent would be forced to use some kind of ranged removal, like a Phoenix Fire, to kill it. In which case, they now have one less. Primus Fist is also great because while we're not really an aggro deck, we are a ramp kind of thing, a ramp value deck. Primus Fist just helps us push that extra lethal. When combined with the fact that our general can continue to gain attack from his Bloodborne spell, it becomes extremely useful. Young Silthar, just a really solid 2-drop. If you're playing Magmar, I highly recommend this card, especially with the changes that were made to Rebirth. It's just good because not only is it something your opponent has to deal with, but they also have to deal with the egg. So if you're going second and you throw down a young Silthar on your mana spring tile, your opponent can't just attack with their 2-drop and themselves and kill it because there's also an egg. And when they pass the turn to you, you're going to get it back. So it is a very durable 2-drop that almost guarantees you have some sort of presence early game. And if you play it to impede movement from your opponent, it forces them to really have to invest on getting rid of it, which is fantastic. Just anything to help control your opponent's movement. This is great for controlling movement as well, just because they have to get rid of the egg. Chrysalis Burst. This is only a 2 of. There is a strong argument to be made for a 3rd. Maybe cutting 1 Elder for it, to be honest, would be okay. And it's something that I am definitely thinking about, because the Elders are the most cycled card in the deck. We quite often, you just don't want to spend 7 mana. Not that the Elder is a bad card in the deck. Getting flashed out early is fantastic, but Chrysalis Burst more often is going to be played early to mid game, and you're going to get great value out of it because it is hard to deal with, and you already have so many other threats in the deck, even as early on as Tegate and not really Elkane, but against some of the Zoo decks, Elkane's body is pretty good. Chrysalis Burst, some of the eggs are going to stick and potentially win you the game based on what they are. I'm not a huge fan of the RNG involved, since they spawn randomly and they have random things in them, but the fact that 4 mana usually gets you at least 2 decent minions is not bad. Earth Sister Tegate. Now, she helps us with removal. We already have the Egg Morphs and we already have the Macantor Warbeast, and Tegate just adds to that. If you flash or have Kujata, so say you flash Reincarnation Tegate, or you have a Kujata and you play Tegate, she's going to take the 2 or 1 damage and then do that as an AoE. So even a 2 mana 3/2 do 2 damage to all enemies around her is pretty solid, because not only is she a 3/2 still, but you're most likely only going to be doing that if she's going to kill stuff. Even if you're just tempoing her out for 4 mana, she's a 3/4 body, which is pretty good, that your opponent has to make inefficient plays around, because in order to kill her, he has to do damage, usually, or waste premium removal, like Egg-Morph or Pado, Onyx Bear Seal, for example. So things like that. Things that don't do damage, or Tegate forces them to back up and just sacrifice the things so they don't mind dying. Regardless, she gets value. And if she hits a general, she also does 5 damage to them, because she's going to do 3 and then do the 2 that she takes. So she's a very super solid card. I think she always has been, to be honest. Auto include in Magmar. Great card. Earth Sphere gives us 8 health. We are using our general to board control. There are some pretty aggressive decks out there. Songhai is just a card that I feel like you need, to be honest. Very good. I would run this card in other factions if I was allowed to, but we have Ironmar, our healer, and Vitruvian, so we're pretty set. Egg we have 3 of them because we are trying to oppress our opponent, and Egg is a way to do that. Obviously, we want to get rid of giant provokes, we want to get rid of any of their big minions. We just want to make sure that we can take any threats they have and neutralize them so that they don't compete against our mission. And I don't really think Egg ever hasn't been run. It's a very strong card, but that is the reason for it. So going down to our win conditions. Sword Sister Elkane, I am going to consider her a win condition. The fact that you can tempo her early game, even flash her early game in order to keep a giant hand is fantastic. Since she gives you 2 random cards in your faction, she gives you access to things that aren't normally in the deck, or gives you more of things that are in the deck. I've had her give me an Elder and an Egg Morph. That's fantastic. Granted, the Elder isn't the best, because we already have 3, and we're definitely not going to be playing 4 in a single game, because we never even play the 3rd one. And if we play the 2nd one, it's usually to BM before we get lethal. But regardless, that aside, Sword Sister Elkane is just a very good card in this deck. Where we're very minion heavy, and we just need more things to do, and we need more card draw. And without sacrificing anything to put in Sojourners, for example, Sister gives us that, or Elkane gives us that we need. She's also a pretty good body against any like little weenie decks that are running tons of little guys, stuff like that. Inquisitor Kron, I don't think this really needs to be explained. 4/6 provoke. Whenever you replace a card, which you're going to be doing anyways, you get a 2/2 prisoner with a keyword. Very solid. Provoke helps you keep those Songhais in check. It helps stop those aggro decks. It locks generals down so that they can't get away from your Rars and your Elders. Good. Self-explanatory. You can even, on turn 1, if you're going second, Flash Incarnate Kron and then cycle in order to, on your first turn, get a 4/4 provoke and one of the prisoners, which can be decently solid, to be honest. We have Rar. Now, I'm not a fan of battle pets. Not saying that they're necessarily bad. Obviously, there are some strong decks based around them. I just don't like the fact that they're a unit that has its own mindset. Now, luckily, their AI is pretty easy, so you can play it where you think it's going to do the best, and you can abuse the fact that you know it's AI. The only downside to Rar is the fact that your opponent also can abuse its AI by placing things around it in the way it wants it to attack them. But regardless, Rar is super solid. The fact that it's a 3/7 body, it's going to be pushing damage, it's going to be killing minions, it's going to be spawning more minions that have to be dealt with. Just like with Kron, it kind of adds to this zoo-ish element. If we flash it out, if we have a Kajuta, if we have both, it's fantastic. One thing you can do, which I don't believe I'll be showcasing in this video, is on turn 1 going first, you can flash play Rar, and you'll get a 3/3 Rar and 2 battle pets, which is fantastic value. Because your Rar will also still be alive, and on your next turn you're going to have 3 things that are going to move. And it's really, really strong tempo against whatever your opponent plays. Plus Rar will then obviously spawn at least 1 more additional battle pet. Zenrui's in here is a 2 of. You know I'm a Sebo player. Sabotage Vitruvian, that is. I love Zenrui. Right now there are a lot of good things to grab with him. Lantern Fox being the #1 best thing to grab. There's also occasionally obelisks, stuff like that. The Bone Reaper also has been seeing some play in Lionar. A little bit of Fringe. I don't see it too often, but I know I play it in my Lionar, which I'll probably play on ladder some point for you. Magmar Warbeast. This card is basically a 6 mana 4 damage AoE. We use Magmar as removal, as reach for lethal, but the fact that with Frenzy you still only get retaliated on by the unit that you attack. The Magmar Warbeast will basically usually be, and this is a lot of value when you think about it, 6 mana, do 4 damage to all enemies in an area, and summon a 4/2. Like, that's usually what it basically says, and that's super, super good. And since it has rush, obviously you can get extra reach by moving a minion, then spawning him, and then running him. So it not only gives you reach distance-wise to do damage, but it also gives you reach when you need to push for lethal to get that 4 extra damage. Fantastic card. You can also, like, Macanter, like, flash with a Kajuta, another Macanter. It's rare that exact situation happens, but there are ways that this deck can cheat out Macanters, like Flash Macanter, Flash Macanter for 8 damage burst, etc. And then we have the Silthar Elders. They are the cards you will be cycling the most. It's very tempting when you're ahead to want to play this card, but you really need to think, based on your opponent's deck and how many cards they have in their hand, if it's worth slamming him down or not, or trying to cycle him for a card that'll have more guaranteed value. This is potentially should be a 2 of, and instead have Chrysalis Burst be a 3 of. The only reason why I'm tempted to keep it like this is because, one, the deck is doing amazing. It's doing phenomenal. It's on a win streak of 6 games, I think, right now, and it's almost in Diamond. I'm 1 Chevron from Diamond. We've been doing a lot of in-house skirmishes. There is a tournament coming up in almost exactly 7 days, so I've been laddering a lot, so I am still in gold ladder, but this deck has been really doing well. I've even used it against some Diamond players and S-rank players in some friendly skirmishes and best of 3s, like in the Shades of Time. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I can't remember your screen name. Shades of Time. But the deck's doing fantastic. It's very, very solid. Its win rate is, I think, like 66%. It might actually be a little higher, to be honest. My overall Magmar win rate is, I think, a 66%. This deck is a bit higher than that. This deck might be in the 70% win rate right now, which I'm sure obviously it'll go lower in Diamond, but I don't see this deck stopping there. But Silthar Elder, again, this card you really want to throw down when your opponent's top decking. It's going to almost auto-win you the game, and that's about all I can say about it. This is just a win condition on 7 mana. 7 mana, they need an answer, you win the game. Wonderful card. I would highly recommend leaving this as a 3, but I'm going to be playing the deck even more and testing it, so we'll see. But that's the deck as it stands. Honestly, other than this going down to a 2 other than Elder going down to a 2 and Burst going up to a 3, I think the deck is going to stay just like this. And yeah, let's jump into some games. Here we are in game 1. So first off, we're going to be pausing a lot, so I hope you don't mind, and hopefully the replay does not bug out. If it does, I apologize. But the point is to give you a play-by-play on how this deck is played against an opponent who is extremely strong. Well, at the moment he was in Gold Division, Shades of Time is a very, very good player, a friend of a friend. He hangs out in our private Discord server a lot. He's a great guy, super great guy, very skilled player. So, you know, and the reason why I'm saying that is just so you guys know that I'm not just playing this deck against some random gold leaguer. I'm playing against somebody who is the deck has to be worth its weight in gold. You know what I'm saying? Like the deck has to be able to work well, and that is why I'm showcasing this person. Now, opening hand, we're going second, which means we're gonna have 3 mana on our first turn. And one of the juiciest plays we can do is Flash Rar first turn. However, at the same time, we don't have a flash. However, we have 2 great cards to cycle. Macanter Warbeast, we don't really want early game. We want to be playing it either on curve or flashing it out, worst case scenario, if we're really behind. But you don't want to hold on to it, especially if you don't have any early cards in your hand. Maybe if you had a Kajuta and the rest of your hand was pretty low, you could hold on to a Macanter. But this card is usually one that we want to be playing for its full cost, just so that it has a higher chance of surviving when it attacks, so they also then have to deal with the 4/2 body that's usually left behind. As well as Earth Sphere. This card is a bit of a tempo loss because you are spending 4 mana just to gain health, which doesn't help you with board control, other than the fact that you take more damage to kill. 8 more damage to be specific. So this is not a card you want to hold on to early game, because you don't even want to play it until late game, when you're fighting for those last few points of damage between you and your opponent. So those are going to be the 2 cards that we cycle for sure. Obviously, Young Silthar is one of the best 2-drops we could start with, so it's always good to see that card. And we are going to get a pretty fortunate draw here once it happens. There we go. So this is a fantastic hand. Kajuta is there is some argument to be made about the placement when you play it on your first turn, but we're going to go here. So I don't think I end up cycling anything. Now, looking at this hand, cycling is very important when you're playing a deck like this because you want to make sure that you're ready for anything. But I have an Egg Morph, which against Lionar is extremely important. Chrysalis Burst we could do next turn, potentially for almost instant game over if our opponent can't deal with it. We have the potential, after playing Kajuta, to play Rar next turn and get a Battle Pet immediately from it. This hand just has a lot of synergy and a lot of great stuff, so I don't replace anything this turn because we have exactly what we want. Now, talking about the Kajuta placement, we are going to look at that right now. So this is where I played Kajuta. Uh-oh. Okay, good, he stopped moving. So, Kujata was played back here. Now, the reason why I did this was because, one, we needed to survive. Now, I could have played it here. The only reason why I didn't is because if the liner moves forward and plays a Provoke, I want the ability to move my Kujata somewhere instead of my entire party being locked down by one Provoke. I wasn't able to use the Young Silthar, obviously, because I had to grab this Mana Spring tile. So no matter what, at least two of my team are going to be able to be provoked. So Kujata was played one space back, because I can still move up and summon something on the mana tile if I had to. Like say I wanted to move Young Silthar up, put something here, move Kujata up, put something here, etc. Anything like that. This just gives me access to a mana tile, and it gives me the ability to move him away and keep him alive. And obviously, we don't want to play Kujata on the Mana Spring and then Young Silthar like somewhere else, because then the opponent's general can walk up and just simply attack the Kujata, and then we'll lose our ability to tempo something out. Now, our opponent did miss a turn 1 play, but I feel like of all the factions, Lionar is the one that can get away with that the best, because they just have so many good value cards. And also Young Silthar, another reason why this is the best early game drop to get, is even to say our opponent had played like let's say a Mystic. If they wanted to, if we had a Primus Fist here, our opponent could say play Primus Fist on this mana tile, buff their Mystic, and then kill our Mystic, or our Primus Fist, and then their general could walk down and they could take this mana tile and have a huge power swing on the board. But with this one, the general would have to walk over and kill the egg. Or if they didn't have another Primus Fist, it would take, and both of them attacked, there would still be an egg to kill. So this just ties up our opponent and almost guarantees that we'll have access to a mana tile the next turn, even if our opponent had some good plays this turn. And you're going to see here it's going to come into effect exactly what I said about the Provoke. So Kujata is able to not be part of this. Now there's a couple options here that I want to go over with what I do. I cycled the other Egg Morph, or the other Chrysalis Burst, because we're most likely not going to be slamming both of them down in a row against our opponent. Because either it works, and then we use that advantage to take control of the board with other cards, or it fails, and we don't want to try again because we now need to control the board again. But there's a few options here, and I'm going to go over them. We can Egg Morph the Silverguard Knight. This keeps our opponent from having anything at all to Holy Immolation, to attack, to use his Bloodborne spell on. It just obviously completely limits our opponent's options. And me being like a hardcore control player, anytime I can tell my opponent, no, you can't have anything, I really want to do that. But there are two other pretty solid options in our hand, and that is the Rar and the Chrysalis Burst. Now, Chrysalis Burst, in the video, if you watch the best of 3, my friend Rizky was telling me that Chrysalis Burst might have been a good idea, and he's right. It definitely could be, because we already have 3 units on the board compared to our opponent's 2. But the reason why I'm not such a big fan of it is there is a chance that our opponent, since he will have 4 mana next turn, could do Holy Immolation if they have a bad spawn and kill a bunch of them. He could even Holy Immolation here and wipe my stuff. Granted, the eggs would be a problem. But between the fact that they're randomly spawned and they have random value, I didn't want to rely on just the RNG when I'm fighting an opponent that I know is a very good player I would rather make a play that I know exactly what the result's going to be and save Chrysalis Burst for when I'm feeling a little more confident in my turn. And Rar, kind of for the same reason. Yeah, we would get a 3/6 body. We could maybe play it like up here so the Holy Immolation doesn't get him, and it was found on Battle Pet somewhere randomly around. Might even grab this mana tile. Granted, that wouldn't really do anything for us this turn regardless. The reason why I didn't go with Rar, though, is because, again, this 3/5 body that potentially can be Holy Immolated or anything is a problem, and it gives him the ability to kill something that he wants. Almost anything, and it's locking me down. So I decided that I was willing to give up a little bit of tempo in order to just crush the Silverguard Knight. Our opponent already missed their first turn anyways, so I know that they have more, their hand is most likely more top heavy mana cost wise, and we've just cycled into another Egg Morph. So if we shut down the Silverguard Knight and our opponent is forced to try to drop another large minion, maybe moving up to the mana tile and throwing down like an Ironclef Guardian, we can also shut that down, and then our opponent has just wasted 2 on-curve minions for nothing. Other than taking an Egg Morph from us, of course. The Gujata I'm still playing defensively with. I always want to position it where it can help out and be part of the team, but because it's so fragile and it's so important, I always want to position it in a place where if our opponent wants to deal with it, they're going to have to make some kind of play, such as the Dancing Blades, which is sadly unfortunate. Okay. Now we're talking about that turn. Sorry, the replays seem to bug sometimes when you pause them and they keep going, so I try to wait until a moment where when I pause they stop. Now that turn we went ahead and Chrysalis Burst even though he had a minion, and I'll tell you why. They're both locked down in this bottom, and I'm blocking the general from moving up. So he can only move side to side and up 1 space, best case scenario. And his only minion is pretty close to him, and it's a minion that the only way to deal with it at the moment was to Egg Morph again. And while we did make the play we did last turn because we could Egg Morph a big minion, there are other things in this faction that I'd rather Egg Morph. Ironclef Guardian, again, being one of the big offenders. The other one being Duelyst, possibly, just because a Divine Bond on a Tombstone can be fairly brutal. Of course, also a Divine Bond on the Dancing Blades could be, but the potential damage out of that is a bit less, and than a Divine Bond on something with 10 health. So I went ahead and did Chrysalis Burst again because of the positioning. We also were able to play Young Silthar, so I knew that I would be able to at least completely lock our opponent from one full direction. Sadly, again, this is why I only run a 2 of this card. Sadly, all the eggs spawned on the side of the field that I gave my opponent access to, but they did spawn in places, at least these 2, where our opponent can't get to them. And this is also good because when you cast Egg Morph, even if the eggs don't survive, it's going to force your opponent to dump a lot of cards from their hand. They give them reach, like removal, like Sunblooms and stuff like that. It's going to force them to use those cards. Sometimes even a Tempest. Now, Tempest it would be the worst card for us to see here, but it doesn't seem like every Lionar is running that, and it turns out my opponent was not running that, as you're going to see. And Tempest would have definitely been the worst case scenario. However, it would have done damage to his Dancing Blades and to him, which would have made Dancing Blades easier to remove anyways. So this overall was the reason why I did it. I like to drop Chrysalis Burst when I have my opponent, even if I don't have full control over the board. He does have a decently large minion and has just killed one of mine for free with it. At the same time, our opponent is locked into a small area. Best time to use Chrysalis Burst, in my opinion. That's also why I only run it as a 2 of, because I personally like to cast them in very specific times, and I don't find those times happening all the time. And here you go, you see what I was talking about, our opponent being forced to use a lot of really good spells to deal with it. That's a Sunbloom that, though this was, and a Lasting Judgment. Those are cards that definitely could have done a lot of work for our opponent later in the game, especially if you dropped a Sunbloom on an Elder, or on a RAR, etc., etc. And now we have a good turn to Egg Morph. It looks like the replay is getting bugged, sadly. So I'm going to pause it and see if we'll just let it catch up. Hopefully this will fix the replay. I'm sorry that it's a little bugged. Alright, so my reasoning for that. So we had saved the Egg Morph, and that was great. We cast the Chrysalis Burst, and though we didn't get anything out of the eggs because they were all removed and these two were silenced, it did force our opponent to not get any extra board control and to play out removal. So we were able to use the Egg Morph that we had saved up to kill our opponent's biggest threat, even after he Bloodborne spelled it. And then the Primus Fist over here, I had thought about playing the Primus Fist here just to lock down our opponent so they can't move at all. My friend Risky has suggested putting it here and pushing for 2 extra damage, and now looking back at it, I completely agree with it, because the point of putting Primus Fist here would have been to keep our opponent locked down, but there's really no point in doing it, because if you look at our opponent with me and the young Silthar here, his only option is to move into a corner, which isn't really bad for us anyways. And even though these eggs got silenced, there still are minions, so even if our opponent moves in the corner and finds a way to get out, we basically have 2 walls up here that are getting in the way, and we're able to get some summoning reach, because we can summon around them still. And looking at our hand, I want to go over something really fast. This deck is great at top decking. Our opponent has 5 cards in hand. We only have 1. But the thing is, our cards are such high value that our opponent is forced to use multiple cards to find a way to deal with any single one of our cards. And that's another reason also why I like to run decks that have some that are just made of threats, you know, with some assistance, because I don't know. Though top decking in this game isn't super common, even in this deck it's not super common because we do have a lot of heavy weight in our cards. I just really enjoy, you know, like say Songhai for example. If you start top decking in Songhai, you basically can lose the game at that point. You know, you can't like juxtapose Killing Edge, you know, if you're only having 1 card at a time. But in decks like this, your top decks are usually pretty brutal compared to your opponents, and that's the main reason why I like playing decks like this. Pardon me. Now there is a bit of a misplay here, and I'll explain it in a second, after we let this stuff go through. Oh, see, they're replacing weird again. Let's pause and let them catch up. That's where it's gonna stop? Okay. Well, that's okay. That shows a bit of a misplay. I knew I was playing RAR that turn. The reason why I played RAR and not Kron is because, one, I had already cycled. So we're already not getting the bonus minion value out of Kron, but also RAR is going to spawn us a bonus minion as well. So by playing RAR first, RAR is gonna, on my turn is going to move, do some damage, and spawn a minion. Then we can play Kron, cycle, and get another minion. So it gives us basically like a burst of minions onto the battlefield. But I want to talk about that misplay I made. Now, the misplay was not in what I did. Using the 2 young Silthars to kill the Primus Fist, and then using our Overload in order to kill the Zenrui was fantastic. You know, again, we used our health as a resource. We had 2 minions with rebirth, so they would come back. The misplay was in where I played the RAR. I played the RAR below him because I wanted to keep minions around him. But again, he's already in a corner. There was no point in surrounding him in a circle. When he's in a corner, we can just surround him on the 2 sides that he has. Also, by playing RAR below, what was I protecting? Literally nothing. Our opponent, even if he was able, even if this Rar wasn't here, he could move here, but the only thing he could do is damage me. If I had played Rar up here, this egg that was on the Mana Spring tile, our opponent wouldn't have been able to walk up and attack it, which means that when this turn was over, we potentially would have had 2 young Silthars to work with instead of 1. And he would have been able to, and he would have been forced to deal with Rar immediately. So this was, and this is potentially a very big thing if you just think about the abilities, to have that 2 extra damage again with more rebirth. This was very bad for me. So that's something, looking back at it, that I would have changed. I believe I made the misplay because I was thinking about, I was talking during the game with my friend Risky, but also this was my first game against Shades of Time in a best of 3, and I had a bit of nerves, well-deserved nerves. I don't want to spoil the video, but I didn't perform badly, and that's nothing. That's not saying anything about Shade's skill. I definitely think that he is, at best, I'm equal to him. I would never say that I'm better than him just because I can take games off of him. But what am I trying to say? But because of that, I was nervous, So I did make some misplays on that as well. I'm sorry the replay's being so weird. Let's let this happen. Now this is exactly what I was talking about the minion burst. We had Rar come up, he did 3 damage, he spawned a battle pet, and a very good one at that. We played Kron, we cycled, we got a better card to play, which was Young Silthar, as opposed to the Zenrui, because there was nothing for us to steal. Lionheart doesn't have a lot of Zenrui targets, besides the occasional Bone Reaper. We got a minion, and has Force Field, which is amazing, and because these eggs, we were able to project a Young Silthar way up at the top, making it so our opponent doesn't really have a super value Holy Immolation. The best one would be if he was able to Holy Immolation his own spot, but we haven't provoked by Kron, so in order to Holy Immolate anything here, he would have to be able to get rid of Kron first, and in which case he would immediately use Holy Immolation value, and even if he Holy Immolated here, we're getting a battle pet out of Rar, and Rar would survive. So spreading everything out like this was very good. And now I also want to talk about the reason why I attacked this. Our opponent is Lionar, and they have Divine Bond. Yes, I took 3 damage, and I made my Young Silthar go into its egg without killing this minion, but our opponent now no longer can Divine Bond for 6 damage. This will not be a 9-6. If he Divine Bonds it, it'll be a 4-1, which is way less threatening. That is why I attacked this. With Lionar, you really want to think about the potential burst. I think I calculated he could do 9 damage burst, because he would have to trade here for Kron. Then he could Holy Immolation this for 4, attack me for 7, then hit me for 2 more, and that'd be 9. Granted, save any other potential cards he might have, like a Tempest or like Tigers, anything like that. But regardless, that is the reason why I attacked this. Even if you do the math and it turns out that if this got Divine Bond, it can basically lose you the game, it's usually worth it to take a little extra damage in order to lower the health, for sure. And we have an Elder in our hand, which is going to be great if a lot of our minions stick, because, again, it's potential game win right there. And again, even more Rar value. The fact that every time it takes damage, it spawns a battle pet is fantastic. using our general's Bloodborne spell to keep board control. I'm gonna pause here. Even though it's about to do a bunch of crazy stuff, because the replays are bugged again. I do apologize for that. Okay. I really wish they had just let me pause when I wanted to pause. The reason why we did our placement as we did, when you play a sister, sister Tegate to be specifically, I like to play her in a situation where she's boxing in a general, but you generally want to play her in a space where she's adjacent to as many enemies as possible. Or she's next to something that you really want to force to move to a different location because of her ability, where any damage she takes, she deals to all nearby enemies. She's also great in a box-in situation, because if our opponent hadn't had the Lightbender into Holy Immolation combo, and you think about what we had on the board, in order for him to get out of this space, he had to either kill me, which would have won him the game anyways, kill a Force Field minion, kill a minion with Rebirth, or cut through Tegate, who would have probably killed him if he had tried. Holy Immolation was a problem, and ended up being a problem. However, he still would have taken 4 damage, and it wouldn't have killed anything specifically if he hadn't had the Lightbender. So this isn't a misplay by any means. This is just Lightbender being Lightbender. Lightbender is a very solid card. I don't run it in more decks just because, even though the card's good, I don't like it too much. But it's solid. This card, I really only run it when like Cassiva Shadow Creep stuff's crazy. But that is the reason for the positioning. Also, the reason why we put Ubo over here was just to, again, give him more targets for Holy Immolation. We didn't want to, like play it over here so then he could Holy Immo whatever. You know what I'm saying? Just spread even more things out. Give him options for his Holy Immolation. The reason why I thought this would be the safest place to play it and not up here is because I figured he would want a Holy Immolation here so that he could kill the egg, for example. I put it here because I figured he wouldn't want a Holy Immolation here because Tegate would take 4 damage and do it to him. However, again, he had Lightbender. So that was the only problem with Lightbender. But as you can see, the deck, even though we've been basically top decking for a while now, the deck is the reason why I called it value is because our opponent has to answer very high value cards turn after turn after turn. And keep in mind, we haven't been drawing Elkane. If we had drawn Elkane at any point, we would have almost guaranteed won the game instantly. But we have not been drawing her, so we haven't been getting that extra bonus. And we're almost, halfway through our deck? We're getting close to halfway through our deck. And we've been cycling every turn, so we've basically seen half our deck and have not drawn an Elkane. So that is just bad luck. So this is a fine position. But you see, our opponent's also down to 1 card now. And like I said, that is the point of value. You attrition your opponent and you oppress the board until they're forced to use so much to come back in the game that they're forced to start top decking with you. And our deck is way superior than most decks at top decking. Now here, the reason why I didn't use my Bloodborne spell and... Actually, did I miss lethal? No, I didn't miss lethal because the Lightbender was blocking. I was just like, wait a second, he only has 6 health. Now, the reason why I didn't use my Bloodborne spell and attack, even though I just said we want to use our health as a resource, is simply because our opponent has Roar, obviously, and there is Argeons out there that run the Saber-Spine Tiger, in which case that would be 5 damage burst, and if we had attacked and took 3 damage, it would be down to 5. So at this point in time, I want to save my health as much as I can while still using my hero power. So if he decides to come in on me or does attack me with something, there is a bigger chance that my general. It basically makes your general look more intimidating, and it makes them less. It makes your opponent less inclined to run minions into you or to attack you themselves. Which is another reason why I think Voth is better in this deck, because even if you're not hitting your opponent and you're just using your Bloodborne spell, you essentially will save health because your opponent won't want to just trade the 2-for-2 damage with their general, like they would if you played a different one. So that's why I use these two minions. Plus, with Force Field and Rebirth, these minions basically are going to stay alive, and he's going to be forced to have to deal with them, which is great. Also, our egg spawns weren't the best because our opponent is moving away from us. But again, now if he wants to deal with this Rebirth egg, he has to move closer into a place where I potentially can kill him with my Bloodborne spell plus this. And these eggs will all be closer to him. And we drew an Earth Sphere, which is great at this point in the game. And the fact that we didn't have Earth Spheres or Elkane yet is just down to, what is the word, variance. It just didn't happen. Now our opponent got confident with his provokes and moved in close to us, but that's actually going to work out okay for us because of the fact that we have Earth Sphere, which is very solid. Sadly, though our eggs are great, none of them are in a place where they can act immediately. So with this 5/6 being the biggest threat, again, because Divine Bond would make it into an 11/6, we do want to get rid of this and instead leave the Silver Guard Knight up. And Earth Sphere, again, the reason why that card is ran is so that we can have value. I also split up things here. I ran the Vindicator over here so that way if he was forced to do an AoE here, it wouldn't be that great for him because yes, it would kill the Vindicator and do damage to me, but this has Force Field. And these two minions are both high values, so he might be more tempted to run over here and Holy Immolation over here, for example. That was my plan. And now we're starting to get board control. Yes, our opponent has a lot going on, but we also have a lot of ways to deal with what he's doing. We are in a situation where we're forced to body block the Dancing Blades. We can't really deal with it this turn, but we have a pretty solid body block in the form of a Silthar Elder. And this is, like I said, you want the Elder to start slamming it down when you're top decking. Flesh Incarnate, of course, is not a good top deck. Late game, this card is almost useless, but its potential is so good that there's no reason not to run it. And as you see here, our top decking is usually going to be superior than our opponent's. Where he top decked to Deprive His Fist, we finally got an Elkane. And now we're going to start playing minions while also keeping ourselves spread out from our opponent. Though you usually want to bunch minions against a Lionheart, this is okay because Lionheart's AoE requires them to have a minion in the middle, and then you like Holy Immolation, for example. So this isn't too bad for us. And there is a Sunbloom, but it's not a huge deal. Shades realized a GG, and he suicided into the Elder, and that was the game. So there's a play-by-play of how I run this deck. I also have one more just for fun thing I want to show you real fast, so go ahead and hang on, I'll jump into that right now. Here we go. So this is the replay I wanted to show you. I'm not going to be doing like a crazy play-by-play of this one. It's mainly just for you to see how funny and fun this deck can be when it opens. So I kept everything because there's so much potential in this opening hand with the Kujata. So I went ahead. When I went first, though, I will say I like playing Kujata, obviously, so I can grab a Mana Spring tile. Again, Songhai, they usually have the best ways to get rid of it, but forcing them to get rid of it is okay, because they lose some combo pieces. But we're going to see a pretty fun turn here. So she plays Katara, that's cute, you know. We're going to one-up her. We're going to take this Mana Spring tile. We're going to go ahead and use Flash Incarnate here. Well, first we're going to play Elkane to get some card draw. She's going to grab another Mana Spring tile. So then we can Flash Incarnate and grab Rar. Rar is going to spawn. It's going to take 2 damage and take 1 damage. Therefore, it's going to spawn 2 Battle Pets. And there they are. Oh, it looks like they both have Celerity as well. So we pass the turn to our opponent, who uses Twin Strike and hopes to roll something good. And they do. They're able to kill Elkane, but we get more Battle Pets. So I don't know why she attacked that, to be honest. And this isn't low in the ladder either. You know, we're in gold. Gets hit again, goes down to 19. We have 2 Celerity Battle Pets, so they're going to go ahead and walk over. We also got the Mana Spring tile out of this. So there's 2 damage, there's 2 more damage. Here comes another 4 damage here. Hits her, great. Hits her again, sure. Alright, 3 more damage, here it comes. And it goes down to 8. Alright, I walk over, I kill that minion just in case. There we go, play down Kron. Because why not at this point, you know, just making sure. And we pass the turn to our opponent. And you know what, they just decide this isn't worth it. And there they go. So that's the game. This deck is a lot of fun. I originally made it just kind of as a joke. That's why I called it Ferrari Magmar. You know, it's just like, let's just make a really expensive deck. But the deck is doing so well that I'm keeping it. And I'm playing it a lot. I'm playing it seriously. I'm playing against good opponents. And the deck is doing well. So make it yourself if you can. If you have the cards. I guarantee you it'll treat you well. And have fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope I'm making more play-by-play deck techs in the future. And I'll see you guys